And all Christians watching this need to realize the time is now to start speaking up, because we have been silenced about the things that are happening to us for a very long time. And the media is very clearly not our friend. When there is wall-to-wall coverage of Christians being killed in Armenia, Christians being killed in Nigeria, and the treatment of Christians in America and all across the globe today, then you ask me if I will use my platform and I will use my voice to speak about what's happening in Israel. How about that?
Okay.
Candace Owens recently went on Piers Morgan to discuss her firing from the Daily Wire, the smear articles and future smear articles that are coming out about Candace Owens, paid for by Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire, allegedly. Of course, we have to say, because we don't technically know for a fact that it was them, even though Candace Owens and many others have reported and insinuated heavily that it is Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire that are paying for these articles to be written. Now Candace Owens went on Piers Morgan and left Piers Morgan absolutely shocked with the things that she was saying. As we all know, Piers Morgan is one of those guys that doesn't get shocked very often. He's always someone who he's always interrupting. He's he's always butting into people's statements and stuff like that. The things that Candace Owens was saying was so strong and so shocking and stunning to Piers Morgan. He wasn't even able to be his whole, old interrupting self. The person who always interjects, always stops someone mid-thought, mid-sentence to insert his own opinion into what they're saying. He couldn't even do that because he was just stun-locked by the things that Candace Owens was saying and revealing. This tweet here from Censored Men says, "This is why Candace Owens was fired from the Daily Wire. She refuses to be silent on Ben Shapiro's favorite country's war crimes. She felt sympathy for the Palestinians. She wanted to end aid or U.S. aid to Ben Shapiro's favorite country. She was a proud Christian. The Daily Wire couldn't allow that. We stand with Candace Owens." Let's check out this clip here from Candace Owens' appearance over on Piers Morgan Uncensored.
I could have never imagined the amount of dead Palestinian children that I would see on my X feed since then.
It's horrific.
It's heartbreaking to me as a mother. It's horrific to me that the media seems almost complicit in the dehumanization of Palestinians. And I will not be on that side, because at the end of the day, the hit pieces, the name calling, the anti-Semitism, the psychopathic language that seems to be coming out of people means nothing. And I want to make sure everybody knows this, right? At the end of the day, you are going to have to account to God for the things that you allowed, for the things that you were complicit in, and for the things that you did not have enough courage to state.
Okay.
The amount of death of Palestinian children has been unacceptable, full stop.
Okay.
Bibi Netanyahu, in my view, should not be given an invitation to Congress. I think it's unacceptable.
I agree.
Unacceptable.
I don't
and to
think
be clear, for whatever the reason, when it comes to the topic of Israel, it does seem that journalists are fearful to critique Israel.
Well, I'm not at all.
Why is that? Because I would say, Piers, that you seem a little fearful to critique Israel and to want to always seem that you're coming across a little bit understanding of everything they're doing. What is it that makes journalists, corporate journalists,
let me respond.
fearful of saying, hey, Israel has done a ton of things that have been very wrong?
Yes, and I have said they're wrong. I think Netanyahu should go. I think,
to be completely fair here, Piers Morgan has been fairly critical, at least for someone who is somewhat in the mainstream. I mean, I think Piers Morgan is pretty mainstream, at least someone who is in the public eye as much as Piers Morgan is. And he's a pretty big name. He has been pretty critical of them. Definitely not anywhere near as much as Candace Owens has. He still wants to ride that fence so he can remain platformed and remain mainstream, remain in the public eye as much as he is, whereas they're trying to take Candace Owens out because of how critical she has been. So obviously Piers Morgan isn't going as hard as Candace Owens, but to be fair to Piers Morgan here, he has been a lot more critical than most other people in his position have been and would be.
half of that cabinet should go, because some of them have definitely been using genocidal language. I think a lot of what Israel's been doing in the last few weeks is completely unacceptable. But ultimately, I also, from the start of this conflict, believe that Israel not only had a right to defend itself after the terror attack on October the 7th, but a fundamental duty to its people. And here's where I'm just curious about your tweeting through this.
Which, by the way, Candace Owens says, of course, and I'm sure there's some people out there who disagree with Piers Morgan's statement right there that Ben Shapiro's country had a right to defend themselves. But I think for the most part, people who were on my side of things, who are on Candace Owens' side of things when it comes to this Middle East stuff, is they agree with what Piers Morgan just said. They agree. Of course they had a right to defend themselves. Of course they did. But it's gone beyond that now. Like, I think everybody can see it. That's why people like Piers Morgan are even forced to wake up to this. It's gone way beyond that now. And that's what's woken up people like Candace Owens to this whole thing. I guarantee it. And I'm sure there's other people within the Daily Wire that have been woken up to what's really going on over there now as well. And, you know, I think that they'll eventually speak out. I don't know how soon that will be, but I think they know better. I think a lot of them know better, including Ben Shapiro.
This procedure, this whole war, because on October the 7th, you didn't tweet anything. You didn't tweet anything on October the 8th. And October the 9th, you tweeted, so much world peace ever since we got the orange man out of office. So glad the adults are back in charge. A lot of people say, well, if you care this much about innocent people being killed, why didn't you say anything when 1,200 people were massacred to death in the most brutal, barbaric manner in this awful terror attack by Hamas, and nearly 7,000 more were wounded, some of them catastrophically and irreparably? Why did that not compel you to say anything?
Well, first and foremost, Israel's a foreign country, so typically I talk about topics that have to do with America. Secondly, you're only quoting my Twitter feed. I'm also on Facebook. I'm also on Instagram. I also had a daily podcast in which I did respond directly about what happened and called the...
That's also a really great point. So many people feel so passionately about what's happening over in the Middle East. You know, I call it Ben Shapiro's favorite country for a reason, because people in Daily Wire get very, very emotional about what's happening over there in the Middle East, and they don't get nearly as emotional for any of the issues that we have within the United States. And that goes for across the board, to be honest with you. People are taking such hard stances one way or the other, taking sides in a war that has nothing to do with you, or it should have nothing to do with you. Our hard stance should be, and my hard stance the only hard stance that I have on it is that we should get the hell out of there. Why are we funding this war? Get out. You know, let's solve the issues within our country. I know it's a board talking point at this point, but the border stuff is really bad. You know, it's really, really bad, and we have to fix that. But yet we're worried about what's happening in the Middle East, and not just the government, but the citizens are very, very emotional and very emotionally tied to everything that's happening over there. And, you know, Candace Owens brings up a great point where she's supposed to talk about American politics. You know, this is, and you know, everybody's obsessed with American politics. Piers Morgan isn't even American. I don't think he lives in America, and yet he's still obsessed with American politics. But this Middle East stuff is just on a whole new level to where people feel so strongly about it one way or the other. My stance that I feel strongly about is you shouldn't care that much about what's happening over there. Of course, we care about innocent people dying, and we want to mitigate that as much as possible. But America's involvement in the war is not going to mitigate that at all. It's probably going to do the opposite of mitigate the amount of innocent lives that died. Number two, I don't want to get into this topic too much because it's kind of dangerous, I guess. But was it actually that many people that died on the, you know, in the October 7th thing? Was it 1,200 people? That's absolutely nuts. I didn't think it was that many people. You know, maybe those numbers are inflated. Somebody let me know in the comments. It's always so messy when it comes to the reporting on these sort of things. But let's get back to what Candace Owens has to say to Piers Morgan here.
The event's horrific. Multiple times said what Hamas did was absolutely horrific. So you're using a snapshot of my Twitter feed where you're acknowledging that I didn't tweet for days to suggest that I didn't have anything to say about what had happened. Now, to be clear, I am consistent on all matters. I do not want America involved whatsoever in anything that is happening in Israel. I don't want my dollars sent over to Israel. We should not be supporting Israel. Obviously, Thomas Massey has done a lot of work showing how it doesn't even make economic sense that we have so much debt and yet we're sending money over to support Israel. And the biggest issue, by the way, that I have with Israel in talking about them being above reproach is the fact that they are supplying the arms to murder Christians. Okay. In Armenia, the oldest Christian country in the world, and yet nobody talks about that. For whatever reason, it seems to be the circumstance that when Jewish people die in Israel...
If you enjoy content like this, then make sure you leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It really does help me out a ton. Let's get back to the video.
It's wall-to-wall coverage. But when Christians die all over the world, nobody talks about it. Everyone wants to correlate everything to World War II. Everyone wants to talk about Adolf Hitler, and rightfully so, he was a horrific person. But nobody wants to talk about Henryk Yagoda. Right? Nobody wants to talk about the Bolsheviks. Nobody wants to talk about the Christian Holocaust. I am tired of the media, exhausted of the media not speaking about what is happening to Christians all around the world. And it is especially horrific while at the exact same time that it is happening, the slaughter of Christians in Armenia, the arms being supplied by Israel, that the media turns the other way and says, oh, okay, but what about what's happening in Israel? So you know what I'm asking for? Actual equality. Okay, because it seems like this is like a special category, the special relationship that we have. I'm a Christian first, okay? And so my concerns are going to be with what's happening to Christians all around the world.
This is actually so based from Candace Owens. I want to make this point clear once again as well. I say it all the time, but I just think it's necessary to know. It's necessary to repeat for everyone who's new that's coming in. I am not some hardcore Candace Owens fan or anything like that. I'm not a hardcore fan. Like, if you're a fan, I think if you're a hardcore fan of any of these pundits, it's kind of weird. Like, why the hell are you, like, they just talk and they're just saying their thoughts and they can articulate themselves well. It's not something to be a fan of. You know, it's, you can like someone. Like, I like Candace Owens, but I didn't always like her, you know, only like a year or so ago, or maybe even less, when the whole Steven Crowder versus Candace Owens stuff was happening, and Candace Owens was getting very involved in Steven Crowder's divorce, leaking a bunch of information, I was super critical of Candace Owens. Like, we were making fun of her every single day, basically, whenever that whole situation was going down. So I'm not some Candace Owens stan, you know, but everything that she's saying right now is extremely based, especially when it comes to the Christianity stuff. Because from my perspective, and maybe this is completely wrong, people come after me every time I say this, I think the reason that people are so okay with Christians and the atrocities that happen to Christians around the globe is because Christians have been way too nice for way too long, worried about other people more than themselves for way too long. You know, you think about the people who are within the Daily Wire as a great example. They're all like coming to Ben Shapiro's defense all the time. Every single time somebody says anything like that they could remotely label as anti-Semitic. And you have Christians like Andrew Klavan. I think he's a Christian. He said he's a Christian. I don't know. But he'll say things like, you know, I think more of Ben Shapiro's people, like, they don't have enough power. Ben Shapiro's people don't have enough power and stuff like that. And he would never say that about Christians. He would never say that I don't think Christians have enough power, because whenever someone says that, then they're evil. You know, they're labeled all these different istophobes and stuff. And I don't know. It's because, in my opinion, Christians have been way too nice for way too long, way too accepting of so many other things, and never standing their ground. And Candace Owens, I don't think she's starting a movement at all. I think there's other people who have started this and been doing this for a while, but she's definitely the biggest name. And I really, really appreciate her doing that, because I think she knew what was going to come with it. She said that multiple times. She knew the backlash and the possible firing and loss of money and things like that would come with her taking this stance. And I appreciate it. You know, I really do think that, I think she's being genuine. I really do. And like I said, I'm not a huge fan of, I am a fan of Candace Owens now, but I've never been like a hardcore fan of Candace Owens my whole life or anything like that. But I really do think she's being genuine with these stances that she's taken, and I have to appreciate it.
Because it is us. We are the #1 most persecuted religion in the world. And all Christians watching this need to realize the time is now to start speaking up, because we have been silenced about the things that are happening to us for a very long time. And the media is very clearly not our friend. When there is wall-to-wall coverage of Christians being killed in Armenia, Christians being killed in Nigeria, and the treatment of Christians in America and all across the globe today, then you ask me if I will use my platform and I will use my voice to speak about what's happening in Israel. How about that?
Okay. I think that's a perfectly reasonable point to make.
That's what I'm talking about, dude. Piers Morgan saying something like that does not happen very often. He normally can push back on basically anyone, but Candace Owens just absolutely stun locks him there, and he just has to move on to the next topic. And yeah, it's just a great job by Candace Owens, man. I don't know how anybody can not respect what she's doing right now. The only way that you could is if you're in the same mindset as Ben Shapiro, the warmongering, you know, type of mindset where you just want war. And I think it's a very emotional stance instead of a logical and rational stance. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you're thinking about Candace Owens' appearance over on Piers Morgan Uncensored. I thought it was a great appearance. This is only 5 minutes of it. Go watch the whole thing if you haven't watched it already. And let me know in the comments what you're thinking about this whole appearance of on Piers Morgan from Candace Owens, talking about the Daily Wire firing, why she was fired, all that good stuff. Let me know in the comments what you're thinking.